The stale air of the Apex engineering lab, thick with the scent of ozone and condensation, was a familiar battlefield for 23-year-old Kesha Williams. As she meticulously scrubbed a test bench, her eyes often drifted to the colossal industrial engine dominating the room's center. For 10 long years, it had sat there, a $50 million monument to perplexing incompetence, gathering dust and dashed hopes. "Hey, princess, how about cleaning properly this time? Is your father as sloppy as you are?" Derek Thompson's voice, sharp as a blade, sliced through the quiet, followed by a chorus of laughter from his fellow engineers. The sound cut deep, a daily reminder of her place. Derek, adjusting his expensive tie with an air of superior amusement, gestured towards Kesha as his colleagues gathered like hyenas sensing weakness. "Seriously, guys, do you think she really understands what she's looking at, or is she just pretending to be interested to impress someone?" Michael Chun, the senior supervisor, didn't even bother to hide his contempt. "Thompson, don't be so cruel. She's probably never seen a machine that wasn't a vacuum cleaner." Their laughter grew louder, echoing off the high ceilings as if this were the peak of intellectual comedy. Brad Mitchell, the chief engineer, approached, his smartphone held high. "Hey, guys, I'm recording this for our WhatsApp group. Title: Cleaner Tries to Understand Engineering. It'll go viral in the office." More laughter, each peal a fresh prick to the dignity Kesha fought so hard to maintain. Kesha had toiled at that company for 2 years. First, she worked alongside her father, cleaning. Then, she was alone, after he suffered a heart attack, likely brought on by the very same daily humiliations she now endured. The engineers at Apex treated her like furniture, useful, but utterly invisible when not needed. What none of them knew was that she had practically grown up in her grandfather's auto shop, a place where diesel engines roared stories of strength and precision into her young mind. "Do you know what the problem with this thing is?" Derek asked, patting the gigantic engine condescendingly, as if it were a defective pet. $50 million invested, the best experts in the country have tried to fix it, and she's still a very expensive paperweight. Maybe the princess here has some revolutionary theory. Chun sneered, crossing his arms. "I bet she thinks the problem is a lack of Windex." The joke elicited another round of laughter that reverberated off the lab walls like echoes of institutionalized cruelty. Kesha remembered her grandfather's words. "Girl, engines are like people. When it hurts, it screams. But only those who listen with their hearts can understand where it hurts." While these men, with their expensive degrees, squandered 6-figure salaries on pompous theories, she had spent 2 years watching every failed attempt, every far-fetched solution, every elite consultant who left the room shaking their head in defeat. "She must be trying to decipher the tiny letters in the manuals," Mitchell chuckled, pointing to the complex technical diagrams hanging on the wall. "Poor thing, she probably can't even read properly. Typical of those people." The loaded pause before the word people was thick with a venom everyone understood perfectly. Kesha felt her blood boil, but she kept her hand steady on the cleaning cloth, understanding that sometimes, silence was the most powerful weapon against ignorance. "Hey, Williams!" Derek shouted, now using her last name as if it were an insult. "Stop pretending you know anything and finish cleaning. We have an important meeting with investors in an hour, and they can't see this." He gestured dismissively towards the engine. In front of all the contemptuous stares, Kesha stood firm, like someone guarding a secret too powerful to be revealed before the right time. For what these men in their expensive suits didn't know was that sometimes, the solution to the most complex problems lies right in front of your eyes, hidden behind the very prejudice of those who refuse to see beyond their own crippling limitations. "Make her clean the executive bathroom too," Derek Thompson barked into his phone later that day, loud enough for Kesha to hear from the hallway. If the princess wants to stick her nose where it doesn't belong, she might as well be useful. The ensuing days morphed into a systematic campaign of subtle, yet relentless, humiliation. Michael Chun began accidentally leaving spilled coffee cups on her freshly cleaned desk. Brad Mitchell made a point of throwing crumpled papers on the floor whenever she walked by, whispering comments about people who don't know their place in society. "Hey, Williams!" Derek shouted on Tuesday, interrupting a project meeting. Can you stop pretending to clean and actually work? We have important clients visiting tomorrow, and they can't see this. He gestured toward her as if she were a defective object. Later, Jennifer Walsh from Human Resources appeared with a form. Kesha, we've had some complaints about your behavior. Apparently, you've been approaching technical equipment without authorization. Her voice dripped with false concern. You understand that this could be interpreted as attempted sabotage. Kesha came home every night with sore knees from scrubbing floors and a broken heart from the echoing laughter. Her small suburban apartment felt like a fragile refuge from the storm of contempt she faced daily. There, surrounded by the rusty tools she had inherited from her grandfather, she relived afternoons in his workshop when she was just 12. Engines don't lie, girl, old Samuel Williams used to say, his calloused hands gently guiding hers through the intricate components of a 1957 Chevrolet. Men can lie, paper can lie, but engines always tell the truth. Do you hear what he's saying? Those profound lessons seemed to echo through the Apex lab every time Kesha looked at the idle engine. While the engineers debated complex theories and consulted 1,000-page manuals, she heard something they couldn't perceive, a mechanical whisper begging for attention in places no one else looked. Just listen to this, Derek said during a staff meeting on Wednesday, gesturing dramatically as other departments looked on. Our special cleaning lady was seen yesterday leafing through technical manuals at the lab table. Someone needs to explain to her that cleaning doesn't include reading. Laughter spread like wildfire. Chun shook his head in exaggerated disbelief. Maybe she thinks she'll discover something that 50 trained engineers haven't been able to figure out in 10 years. Walsh leaned in conspiratorially. That kind of behavior is exactly what we expect from, well, people who grew up without a proper family structure. No sense of social hierarchy. Kesha remained invisible behind the glass door, organizing cleaning supplies while absorbing every poisonous word. What none of them knew was that she had spent her entire childhood in a family structure that would teach them more about engineering in one afternoon than they had learned in 4 years of expensive college. On Thursday, Mitchell decided to elevate the cruelty. Guys, how about a test? Let's see if our cleaning expert can identify at least 3 basic engine components. He pointed to different parts of the machine like a condescending teacher. I bet $50 she doesn't even know what a piston is. Chun laughed, pulling out his wallet. $100 that she confuses a valve with a screw, added Derek, clearly enjoying the spectacle. Kesha stopped cleaning and looked at them directly for the first time in days. 6-cylinder inline, pistons, dual intake valves, electronic fuel injection system with a faulty pressure sensor on line 3, her voice cut through the silence like a knife. The lab fell completely silent. The engineers looked at each other, clearly uncomfortable with the technical precision they had just heard from someone they believed couldn't even read properly. Beginner's luck, stammered Mitchell, quickly putting his wallet away. Anyone can memorize a few technical words. Maybe we should install security cameras in the lab, Chun suggested, trying to regain control. To protect sensitive equipment from inappropriate curiosity. On Friday, Derek decided to intensify the cruelty. During lunch, when the lab was empty, he set his phone to record and began his performance. Everyone, come see this. Our cleaning specialist is trying to fix the $50 million engine. Kesha had only approached the machine to wipe off an oil stain, but Derek narrated it as if she were sabotaging military equipment. Look at her concentration. I bet she's calculating the air pressure based on the position of the moon. The video instantly went viral in the company's internal group. Employees from other floors began making technical visits to the lab just to see the improvised mechanic in action. Even senior executives started commenting on the Williams situation during meetings. Did you see that hilarious video? Asked Amanda Foster, director of marketing, during an executive meeting. At least we know our cleaning equipment is interested in the job. But while everyone laughed, none of them noticed what was truly happening. Kesha wasn't trying to fix anything in that moment. She was observing, cataloging, memorizing every detail that those experts had ignored during 10 years of million-dollar failures. Each new humiliation only strengthened something inside her that her oppressors couldn't see. a quiet determination fueled by the very injustice they tried to impose, like an engine being primed to fire at exactly the moment no one expected it. The weekend crawled by like an eternity, each hour stretching the fabric of Kesha's endurance. She relived every humiliation, every dismissive laugh, every contemptuous gaze she'd received on Friday. But it was on Sunday, while meticulously organizing her grandfather's worn tools in her small apartment, that she stumbled upon something that would change everything. Tucked away, she found a weathered technical notebook that Samuel Williams had kept for 40 years as a mechanic. Engine problems always have 3 causes, read one of the first pages: air, fuel, or spark. Complicated engineers forget the simple. Machines don't lie. People do. Her grandfather's words seemed to whisper directly into her ears, a guiding voice from beyond the grave. On Monday, Kesha returned to work cloaked in a quiet determination that no one noticed. While Derek and his colleagues continued their cruel jokes, she began to look at the engine with completely different eyes, not as a curious cleaning lady, but as Samuel Williams' granddaughter. "Hey, princess!" Chun shouted during the coffee break. "I hear you know how to identify engine parts. How about impressing us again?" More laughter echoed through the lab, but this time, Kesha detected something different, a subtle, defensive tone in their voices. That's when she realized something crucial: they were afraid. Afraid that a mere cleaning lady might actually know something they didn't. Her previous, precise diagnosis about the engine components had clearly made them uncomfortable, and now they were trying to regain control through intensified humiliation. "You know what, Williams?" Mitchell said, approaching her with his characteristic arrogance. "Since you seem so interested in our $50 million engine, how about we give you a real chance? We bet you can't even identify the main problem." Derek clapped his hands, a cruel gleam in his eyes, as if he'd just concocted a brilliant, foolproof plan. "Yes, let's make a bet. If she can point out the problem, each of us pays $100. If she fails," he paused dramatically, savoring the moment, "she never sets foot in this lab again." The proposal spread like wildfire across the floor. Within minutes, at least 20 employees had gathered in the lab, eager to watch the cleaning lady trying to be an engineer show. Jennifer Walsh even brought popcorn, as if settling in for a comedy film. "Take the challenge, expert." Chun taunted, clearly convinced that Kesha would back down, or finally admit that all that confidence is just a facade. Kesha looked around the room, her gaze sweeping over the expectant, smirking faces. Every single person there was convinced they were about to witness an epic humiliation. What none of them knew was that she had spent the entire weekend studying every technical manual she could find online about that specific engine model, fueled by her grandfather's words. "I accept," she said simply, her voice cutting through the noisy side conversations. The silence that followed was broken by even louder laughter. "She actually accepted," someone shouted from the back. "This is going to be better than Netflix." It was then that an unexpected voice cut through the clamor. "May I observe?" Everyone turned to see Thomas Reed, the retired engineer who occasionally visited the company as a consultant. At 70, Reed was a legend in the industry, the man who had designed engines for 3 of the country's largest aerospace companies. "Of course, Mr. Reed," Mitchell said quickly, clearly nervous in the presence of such a respected figure. "But it's just a joke. The cleaning lady thinks she knows about engines." Reed walked slowly toward Kesha, his experienced eyes studying both her and the idle machine. "What's your name, young lady?" "Kesha Williams, sir." "Williams?" Reed repeated thoughtfully. "Are you related to Samuel Williams, the mechanic who worked on Fifth Avenue?" Kesha's heart nearly stopped. "He was my grandfather, sir." "Did you know him?" A genuine smile spread across Reed's face, transforming his stern features. "Sam taught me more about engines than any college professor. He was the best mechanic I ever knew." He looked around the room, his gaze resting pointedly on the surprised engineers. "If you have half his talent, these guys are about to learn a valuable lesson." Derek and Chun exchanged uneasy glances. The joke suddenly seemed far less amusing, especially when a legendary engineer was publicly validating Kesha's technical pedigree. "So," Reed said, turning back to Kesha with genuine interest, "tell me what you see when you look at this machine." Kesha approached the engine, her hands delicately touching different components as her mind processed everything she had learned. The lab fell silent, not with amusement, but with a growing, palpable tension. For a moment, when she closed her eyes and placed her hand on the engine, everyone thought they were witnessing just another theatrical performance. But anyone watching closely would have noticed that it wasn't acting that made those hands move with such precision. It was the contained power of someone who was about to completely rewrite the rules of the game. Kesha approached the colossal engine with the precision of a surgeon, her hands delicately touching different components. She whispered to herself, not out of nervousness, but engaging in the mental process Samuel Williams had taught her. Listen first, then look, then touch. She straightened up, her gaze sweeping over the stunned faces of the engineers. "Did you hear that?" she asked, her voice cutting through the lingering tension. "The engine has been trying to talk for 10 years. You just never bothered to listen." Derek Thompson felt a chill in his stomach. The quiet confidence in Kesha's voice was utterly unlike the timid cleaning lady they had tormented for months. "She's bluffing," he muttered to Chun, but his voice betrayed his growing uncertainty. Kesha knelt near the base of the engine and put her ear to a specific section. "Here," she said, pointing to an area that looked identical to dozens of others. "Do you feel that subtle vibration? That's the first problem." Thomas Reed approached, clearly intrigued, motioning for her to continue. "Clogged cooling system in the secondary line," Kesha stated, moving to another section with growing confidence. The engine was overheating internally, but the main sensors never detected it because they only monitored the primary circuit. The silence in the lab was deafening. Michael Chun furtively checked his smartphone, likely researching whether this made any technical sense. Brad Mitchell had stopped smiling completely, his face now tense with dawning concern. "Second problem," Kesha continued, pointing to a nearly invisible valve on top of the machine. "Pressure valve calibrated for sea level. You guys are 600 meters above sea level. The atmospheric pressure is different." Reed nodded slowly, his eyes shining with recognition. "Of course. How stupid of us not to consider that." Jennifer Walsh whispered something to a colleague, clearly struggling to process how an uneducated cleaning lady was diagnosing problems that 50 trained engineers had missed. Reality was beginning to crack the very foundations of everything they believed about competence and social hierarchy. "And the third problem," Kesha said, walking to a side section of the engine, her tone chillingly calm, "is where you really demonstrated your, how can I put this politely, systematic incompetence." Derek gulped. The word incompetence coming from someone they treated like human trash hit him like a punch to the stomach. Kesha pointed to an electronic control panel. "You installed a state-of-the-art monitoring system, but you forgot to calibrate it to the exact specifications of this engine model. Result, it was running perfectly for 10 years, but you were reading completely wrong data." "That's impossible," stammered Mitchell, clearly desperate. "We checked and rechecked all the systems hundreds of times." "You checked according to generic manuals," Kesha replied with devastating calm. "My grandfather always said, manuals teach you about engines in general, but every engine is unique, like a person. You have to know its personality." Thomas Reed began to laugh, not in mockery, but in genuine, unbridled admiration. "Sam Williams was right, as always, young lady. You just solved in 15 minutes what cost this company $50 million in consulting fees." It was at that moment that reality hit Derek Thompson like a tsunami. An ignorant black cleaning lady had just professionally humiliated him in front of the entire company. Worse, she had done so with technical expertise demonstrably superior to his own. You can prove that?" Chun asked, his voice trembling slightly. Kesha smiled for the first time in months, not a submissive smile, but the confident grin of someone who was about to close the deal. "Mr. Reed, would you mind helping me? I need someone to monitor the indicators while I make the adjustments." "It would be my pleasure, Miss Williams," Reed replied, stepping forward. For the next 20 minutes, Kesha performed a series of precise adjustments while Reed meticulously watched the monitors. Each correction was accompanied by concise technical explanations that left the experts increasingly red with embarrassment. Pressure normalizing. Reed announced. Temperature within ideal parameters. Electrical system responding perfectly. Jennifer Walsh tried to slip out of the room, but Reed intercepted her. Ms. Walsh, I believe the company owes Ms. Williams a formal explanation as to how an employee with superior technical knowledge was relegated to cleaning duties. Mitchell began to sweat visibly. Mr. Reed, we didn't know. She never showed. Reed interrupted, his voice cutting like a razor. Or did you never deign to listen to someone you considered inferior? Derek tried one last desperate card. But she has no technical training. She doesn't have a degree. Neither did my grandfather, Samuel, Kesha replied calmly. But he taught Boeing engineers more about engines than any university. Knowledge doesn't come from a piece of paper, Mr. Thompson. Kesha stood in front of the main control panel. Would someone like to do the honors, or should I start up a $50 million engine myself? No one answered. The lab had turned into a silent courtroom where the accusers were suddenly discovering who the real guilty parties were. Kesha pressed the ignition button. The engine roared back to life with a force that made the entire building vibrate, not the hesitant rumble of a sick machine, but the powerful, steady roar of a giant finally awakened. Green lights flashed on the panels, gauges stabilized at optimal levels, and the rhythmic sound of gears filled the lab like a mechanical symphony. The crowd fell silent, watching a machine that had been given up for dead come back to life at the hands of someone they considered too incompetent to even be in the same building. Thomas Reed broke the silence. Gentlemen, you have just witnessed one of the most brilliant diagnoses I have seen in 40 years of engineering. Amanda Foster, who had laughed at the hilarious video the week before, tried to approach with a forced smile. Kesha, what an impressive demonstration. Maybe we can talk about how you spent months treating me like human trash. Kesha interrupted, her voice clear and cutting. About the video you made to humiliate me. About the racist jokes you thought I couldn't hear. Foster turned pale. The viral video had indeed been her idea. Derek Thompson, Michael Chun, and Brad Mitchell remained silent, their faces cycling through expressions of shock, disbelief, embarrassment, and finally, the devastating realization that they had spent months humiliating someone infinitely more competent than themselves. Miss Williams, Reed said, turning to her with genuine respect, would you like to have dinner with me tomorrow? I have some contacts in the aerospace industry who would love to meet you. As the engine continued to run perfectly, creating a triumphant soundtrack to the collective humiliation that had just taken place, everyone understood that they weren't just witnessing the solution to a technical problem. They were witnessing the complete demolition of a system based on prejudice disguised as competence, where the real injustice wasn't that a cleaning lady knew about engines, but that engineers with degrees were as incompetent as they were arrogant. 3 months later, Kesha Williams walked the hallowed halls of Boeing Aerospace not as a cleaner, but as a senior consulting engineer, her newly issued badge gleaming under the fluorescent lights. Thomas Reed, true to his word, had introduced her to executives who immediately recognized the invaluable insight of someone who could listen to machines in a way that no expensive instrument ever could. Ms. Williams, Boeing's director of engineering, told her during her first week, "Your intuitive approach saved us $3 million on the first audit alone. Would you like to head up our new preventive diagnostics division?" Meanwhile, Derek Thompson discovered that in the real world, competence was not negotiable. After the humiliating engine incident, an internal audit at Apex Engineering revealed he had habitually signed off on technical reports without truly understanding them, relying solely on his senior position to mask his profound incompetence. He was fired within 2 weeks. Michael Chun and Brad Mitchell suffered similar fates. Chun was demoted to a junior technician after it was discovered his previous solutions had cost the company millions in unnecessary repairs, while Mitchell was transferred to a remote branch in Ohio, working under constant supervision, a professional humiliation from which he would never recover. Jennifer Walsh desperately tried to delete the viral video she had created, but the internet, as they say, is forever. Her career in human resources ended abruptly when other companies discovered her active participation in workplace racial discrimination. No reputable corporation wanted to be associated with someone documented for humiliating employees. Apex Engineering itself faced a federal audit on discriminatory practices after the case gained national notoriety, ultimately paying substantial fines and being forced to implement diversity and inclusion programs, ironically having to hire consultants to teach them what Kesha had always known: talent has no color. You know what the most ironic part is? Thomas Reed said during a celebratory dinner 6 months later. Her grandfather, Samuel, taught me more about engines in one afternoon in 1980 than these guys learned in 4 years of college. Kesha smiled, touching the necklace that held a small, cherished photo of Samuel Williams. He always said that engines are like people. You have to treat them with respect to get the best out of them. Amanda Foster, who had once laughed heartily at the hilarious video, now worked as a receptionist at an accounting firm, her MBA worth less than the common sense she never bothered to develop. During an unsuccessful job interview, a recruiter had bluntly told her, "We saw the video where you humiliate an employee. You're not the kind of person we hire." The $50 million engine, running perfectly for 9 months, was generating record profits for Apex. A discreet plaque next to the machine now read, "Repaired by Kesha Williams, Intuitive Diagnostic-ian." It was a small but powerful acknowledgement of her genius. Derek Thompson now found himself ironically working in a mechanic shop in the suburbs, where he had to learn the hard way what Kesha had always known: that real knowledge comes from your hands, not from diplomas. His boss, a veteran mechanic who had never set foot in a college classroom, constantly corrected Derek's basic mistakes. "Young lady," Thomas Reed announced during a conference where Kesha was presenting her groundbreaking diagnostic techniques to hundreds of engineers, "your grandfather would be proud. You've proven that wisdom is priceless, but ignorance always comes at a high price." Kesha's talk went viral for completely different reasons than the previous video. This time, millions watched a young black woman teach engineers from prestigious universities about the paramount importance of humility, keen observation, and fundamental respect, values that no degree can truly impart. Chun even tried to enroll in one of her online courses but was rejected. "Limited spots for qualified professionals," read the automated email, a delicious irony, considering who now defined qualified. Kesha's true revenge was not to destroy other people's careers, but to build something far greater than her oppressors could ever imagine. She transformed humiliation into motivation, prejudice into purpose, and other people's incompetence into her own unparalleled opportunity. "You know what my biggest mistake was?" Derek confessed to a former colleague months later. "I thought a degree was worth more than knowledge. Now, I work for people who know more than me without ever having set foot in a classroom." Kesha Williams had proven that true engineering isn't merely about memorizing formulas, but about the profound ability to listen, observe, and respect both machines and people. And sometimes, the very best revenge is simply to be monumentally better than those who tried to bring you down.